For ball and stick sports like baseball and softball, this is tryout season. It's summer, and it feels like next season, especially for the travel world, is really far away. But we live in a at least 10-month a year calendar these days where kids are asked to try out in July, and if you're lucky, August, for next summer's teams. And the reason for that is because next summer's teams start working out next month, and they might play a fall season, and they might do indoor workouts through the winter. And then, of course, in a lot of age groups, the spring season is your school season. But if it's not, then it's your travel season, because so many communities have lost their rec programs that used to take place in the spring. And then the summer ball season would start. But now that summer ball season stretches into the spring season. And even for some high school kids, I mean, let's not forget, I mean, there are guys who just have walked away from representing their community and focus strictly on their travel sports. And that's not a negative. I'm not saying don't do that. Everybody's case is different, and there's an argument to be made for stronger community sports, and there's an argument to be made for the best playing travel. And we're not going to have that conversation here. The conversation I'm going to have with you is about tryouts themselves. I've been at tryouts this summer. I've talked to parents at tryouts this summer. I've seen question after question after question on Facebook about tryouts this summer. And so let's talk about tryouts and what you should expect both going into them, what you'd experience while you're there. And this is going to be applicable whether we're talking about softball or baseball. And truthfully, when I do basketball tryouts or anything else, it's all pretty similar. So if you can stay with me through it being about baseball or about softball and understand it towards your own sport, you'd be amazed how applicable this is across the board. I mean, even if you're talking theater, I mean, man, oh man, the stories I can tell you about trying out for plays. But let's get back at it here. Okay. So, baseball tryouts, softball tryouts. They start up for most people in July and finish up in August. And what you can expect, whether you're talking about the youngest little kid or you're talking about being up here at the highest level, trying for a 16 or 17U spot in high school, is that you're going to show up. There's going to be a ton more kids there than you expected. If it's super organized, you might get a number, which you'll pin to you or sticker to you, preferably. Hey, coaches, if you're paying attention, get rid of the pin-on ones. They tear up these great athletic shirts these guys are wearing, and get the sticker ones. They're more expensive, but do your players a solid. If you're going to a showcase or a really, really high-level event, they're very likely going to give you a T-shirt with their branding on it and then an assigned number on it. That's obviously the single best way you can do this as an organization, because now not only does it have your organization on it and anywhere they wear that shirt, your organization is advertised, but then the number is right there and visible. But not everybody can do that. And if you're a grassroots program or you're trying to keep your economics stable, or keep a good price for your kids, I understand you're not going to do that. At the most grassroots and basic level, what will happen is the kid will come up and he'll say his name, and then the coach will say what, and then he'll have to say it again, and then the coach will scream his name across the field, and then in some cases the kid will be like, "No, no, coach, no, that's not how you say my name," and then you know that's why we don't like that format. But they'll do that, and then they'll write down notes about the kid, and usually they go through group workout where they stretch them out, dynamics, get them loose and get them ready, have them throw. And then they'll separate them out into outfielders and infielders. And if you're a kid who's going to try out for both, you got to tell the coach that ahead of time. And then they'll send all the infielders who aren't first basemen over to shortstop, and all the first basemen over to first base. And they'll hit ground balls to the shortstops who will throw it. And it doesn't matter if you're a second baseman or a shortstop or a third baseman. You're probably all going to shortstop. And you're going to throw the ball across the diamond to the first baseman. You're going to get a couple to your right, a couple to your left. They're going to have you do a charge and throw. If it's really elaborate, they'll also then smash the ball out to the outfield and have that guy throw it into you, and you'll cut it. But that'll probably only happen for a few kids, and that'll probably only happen once they get to the outfielders. So anyway, the first baseman will all get judged on how they catch that ball and how they dig, and the infielders will all get judged on their footwork and then how strong their arm is. And if everybody's arm is great, the first baseman don't get to show off. If it's much more realistic, half the kids are going to bounce the ball, half the kids are going to throw it in with enough power to get it there. But of the kids who get it there, half of those are going to hit the fence with the ball because you're nervous. You're not actually warmed up all the way, and you're not familiar with each other. The timing feels awful. And so, unless you've done a lot of tryouts, a lot of kids are going to make bad throws. The coaches know that. Don't stress it, mom and dad. Don't get in the car and be like, I can't believe you overthrew the first baseman. How many? Coaches know what's going on. They're going to watch the kid's footwork. They're going to see how he comes up with the ball and how he throws it. Whether it hits the first baseman in the chest or not is only going to be relevant if they're separating the difference between two very closely rated players. Hopefully, they just bring them back for another tryout. And it has a bigger impact on what the first baseman looks like than it does on how your player looks like. Please calm down. If they're an outfielder, they're going to go out to right field, and the third basemen or some of the infielders are going to go stand at third. They may have some of the first basemen cut for home, and they're going to blast out balls, and they're going to do the exact same routine. They're going to try to throw in all the way to third. They're going to try to throw into the cut. They're going to try to throw into home. They're going to try to throw into the cut. And depending on how organized the group is, they may have them charging ground balls and catching fly balls. They may not have a great fungo guy, so you might just get what you get. They could use a machine, which a lot of coaches, that hits their ego. But personally, I'd rather have consistent fly balls than have my ego hurt. So when I'm trying out outfielders, that is my preference. But if you've got a great fungo guy, love it. That's the single best way you can do it. So anyway, they're going to go through all that. They're going to time them running. If it's a showcase type situation, they're running the 60. That is the standard. If it's a regular tryout, they're probably having them either run home to first. That's really, really big with softball. They may have them running first to third. I actually like that one because then you get to watch them take a turn. Some teams will even have them run the whole diamond. Again, that's more common in softball than baseball, but you're going to run in some form. I used to always have them run first because that was the standard. Everybody had them run first. Coaches, I'm begging you, move running to the end. I know you like to end it with pitching and catching because then everybody can leave who's not involved in that. Fine, if you want to end with that, but have them run after they do their fielding and after they do their hitting, and they will do hitting probably in a batting cage. Some coaches have them hit on field. That's not as common. But here's why I want you to have them run after. Injuries happen in running. They do. And it's not just the pulled muscles. I've seen plenty of kids. I mean, I was at a showcase event with a national company, and like the second kid who ran pulled a hamstring. Now, this is a good kid, and it just happens. And now he was at reduced capacity for the rest of that showcase and really never could perform up to mark, even though he should have been a sub 6'8", 60. Instead, he was gimpy. So move it to the end. Worst case I've seen, and this one was a kid running first to third. Great kid, volunteered to go first, and the very first thing he did was break his arm sliding into third. It happens. We've all seen it in baseball. We've seen guys dislocate their shoulders, break their wrists, break their ankles. It doesn't happen often. It doesn't happen at every tryout. It doesn't happen every tryout season, but it happens. Move the running to the end. Give these kids a chance to try out before you give them what is probably the most likely drill that could possibly injure them. Okay, I digress. If you're a pitcher or a catcher, you're going to hang around all day. If you're a catcher, you are going to work your butt off all day. And it's going to feel like you never really tried out until finally, after all of this, they send you out to do your pop time and your legs are shot. Coaches, again, hey, move that to ahead of when they run bullpen sessions so they're not gassed. You expect them to give you their best. Give them that opportunity. But if you're a catcher, just be ready to be exhausted. There's going to be way more pitchers than catchers trying out. There just is. And there's going to be a bunch of kids who shouldn't be pitching, who want to show the coaches that they could become a pitcher or that they could be used in garbage time. So there's going to be a lot of throwers. Once you get through all of that, the hardest part of tryouts. You've gone through the hitting. You've gone through the fielding. You've run, and hopefully you didn't get hurt. You've done the pitching and the catching, and the coach says, thanks for coming out. We'll be in touch. Will they be? Way, way too many coaches will not be in touch. They don't send even a courtesy email saying, hey, thank you for coming out, but we're going a different direction. They just go radio silence. I hate that. Don't do that. At the same time, Parents, don't harass the coach the next day. Here's the reality of what happens. If you are super elite, the exact fit they need, you probably don't make it off the field before a coach puts his arm around you and is like, hey, dude, love you. But for the vast majority of people, you're going to get home, and in the first 24 hours, they're going to reach out to the first tier of guys they want. They may also have a bottom tier that just isn't a good fit. That doesn't mean your kid isn't good enough, but if he's going to be the catcher on a team that has 3 catchers that are headed to college to catch, why would you want him to be the 4th? Okay, so those top and bottom tiers a lot of times get those emails right off the bat. Hey, love to have you. Hey, not a great fit. Everybody else is stuck in limbo. Why? Because they're going to give those guys who they put this first offer out to 24 to 48 hours to tell them what their plan is. And some of those kids are going to be like, hey, I'm in. And they'll go ahead and reserve their roster spot. Some of those kids are going to be like, hey, I've got tryouts on Thursday for an even better team than yours. Some coaches will be like, well, then, hey, thanks. Good luck with that. We're going to move on. Some coaches will hold that spot because that kid is so much better than the kid that they would go to next. Once you get through all of that, you're 24 to 72 hours later, now that next batch of kids are going to get messages. And most coaches have 3 tiers of kids that they're going to message offers to, and it's going to feel like forever as it takes a week to get all of those messages. But that's the reality of tryouts, is that most kids aren't this at a team. Most kids aren't this at a team, but there's more of this than this. And it's all relative. You can be the single best player on your AA team, but you've gone to a tryouts for a team that's bigger and better, and you're fighting to be the 10th man on their roster. That doesn't change how good you are. It doesn't change it. I was at a softball tryout, and there was a couple of pitchers, and I was like, man, those girls look really good. But their velo's not quite where it needs to be. They're throwing 45 to 50, but at 14U, they really want to see you getting closer to 55. And then I realized a couple of those girls were actually 12U. Oh, okay. Well, now that 12U coach is going, and that 14U coach is going, well, if they were just a year older. So you may not even be comparing yourself apples to apples at the tryout, because there could be multiple age groups at that tryout. You don't always know who the coaches got out there. I was at a hilarious tryout. This was a few years back, and it was either 10U or 11U. I don't remember what the actual age group was, but this kid who was 6'4" shows up, and everyone's like, oh my goodness, he's 11 years old. No, he was a high school junior. But on the day of the high school junior tryouts, he wasn't available. And so they asked him to come to this tryout, and the high school coach watched this kid. You know what? It must have been 13U. It must have been the first year on the big field. So anyway, they asked this kid to come out, and I mean, he had a hose. He's throwing gas. He tried out 4 different positions. And they loved him. I don't know if he made the team or not, but it was super intimidating to all these other 13U kids who were sitting there going, I got to compete with that? No, you don't have to compete with that. You're not competing with anybody. And that's the hardest part to understand in tryouts. You're not actually competing with anybody. Yes, they all want the same spot as you, but you're not there to compete. You're there to show the team what you can do. If you're a good fit, you might beat out somebody who was faster than you, or had a bigger arm than you, or hit the ball harder than you. You don't know exactly what the coach wants, which brings me to the next point. You don't know what the coach wants. You could be the single best shortstop at the tryout, but if they've got 3 shortstops and maybe one of them's the coach's kid, you might not be a guy they want. They might want you anyway and offer you a spot, but if they've got a shortstop who, let's say you've got paid coaches, because everyone's going to go, oh, daddy ball, daddy ball, daddy ball. Get over that. That's a whole other rant. But without dad coaches, youth sports don't exist. Without mom coaches, youth sports don't exist. So let's say, though, just your ideal situation. Paid coach, no kids on the team. Doesn't give lessons to anybody on the team either, so he can't be biased because of that. We're talking true neutrality. strictly, in fact, let's go a step further. It's the coach for the 18U team running the tryouts for the 15U team. All he's doing is putting the best players on the field and just going to hand that roster over to the younger coach. And he's watching and watching, but they've got a 15U kid who's been with the organization since 11U. He's been the starting shortstop all that time. He's their number 2 stick. He's their best defender. He's a great base runner. He, on their scale of 1 to 10, rates out as a solid 8. But you're a 9. They really want you. Maybe you're an 8.5. But they love this kid. They know this kid has been there. He's going to show up. He comes from a great family. They think he's going to get better. And they're not willing to give his job to you. They're not. Because if they give his job to you and you decide next year to move on to yet another team, they've now taken this guy they've worked with and trust, and they've alienated him and maybe even lost him. So they may offer to you the spot anyway. And what they're going to think is, well, we'll move over to third, we'll move over to second, send him out to center field. He can do some DHing, no big deal. Hey, you know what? He's actually got a good arm. Maybe he can learn to be a pitcher. There's a million things they could be thinking. You need to have done enough homework and paid enough attention to know that that is the situation. But if you haven't, or if you have, ask. When that offer letter comes and this team that you've wanted to play for has said, hey, we want you, it's not an automatic yes. It's, hey, coach, I am really excited about this opportunity, but I know you've got some really good players. How do you see me fitting in on the team? You're not asking for guarantees. You're not saying, make me the starter. You're asking, how do you see me fitting in on the team? Where do you see my reps coming from? And what do you see me working towards? Because here's what I can tell you. I know a kid who was a longtime shortstop who, when he got to 17U, he had a coach who was also a college coach. And the coach said, look, I really want you, but I don't know that shortstop is your long-term spot. I mean, I definitely will use you at shortstop now because you're good. And my other shortstop plays multiple positions and we want to get him some exposure to get into college. But I got to tell you, you wouldn't be shortstop on my college team. Whoa. Okay. So now you've got to reevaluate who you are as a player. And he guided that player to getting more reps at third base. He guided that player to playing a little bit of outfield because he was fast. And he took him to the mound and said, hey, look, you've got natural movement here. You're not throwing hard enough to be a college pitcher, but that's not from lack of ability, that's lack of form. So now this kid who's always been a shortstop is doing all these other things. And it's really easy to be upset about that if you're mom and dad. You're like, no, my kid's a shortstop. Ah! But maybe the coach has a really good reason for it. The only way you find that out is if you ask. And in that situation, they asked up front and got the information, and they evaluate, and they said, hey, you know what? I trust this guy, so we're going to go ahead and do this. I've also seen the other way around. I've seen the kid who has always been, a third baseman and a right fielder. This kid's a great example of this. He was always a third baseman and a right fielder, but mobility, big arm, huge bat. So what do you do when you get to high school with a poor mobility athlete with a big old arm and a big old bat? Well, you move him to first base. This kid was not having it. Truth of the matter is, what he projected out, in my opinion, and I was not his coach, he was going to be a DH in a PO. That was his future. His digging just wasn't up to. But the coach told him, hey, you're going to be a first baseman. And he's like, nope, sure not. He found another team to play for. And he continued playing corner outfield and corner infield. And that's great for him because that's his path. That's what he wanted to do. What happened to him in college? I have no idea. Lost track of him after time. But he asked, he was told, he hated it. He went somewhere else. And just because I personally agree with that coach that something else was his future, doesn't mean that player does. Doesn't mean that player's parents do. And there's nothing wrong with saying no thank you to a team you tried out for if there's another fit out there. Because guess what? Most teams are going to say no thank you to most players. So what do? You've gone through the tryout season. You've lost your mind. You didn't find the fit you wanted. I don't care if you made no teams or if you made every team. but you just weren't happy with any of them. What do? Panic, panic, panic. No. Look, September rolls around and you don't have a home. You might be in the best position of anybody. What? No, look, with the exception of the summer after your junior year, there are a million things that you could be doing to make yourself a better athlete other than just playing travel sports. There's a million things. Look, take all that money, get a strength and conditioning coach. Take all that money, get a position skill coach. Take all that money, sign up for the drop-in leagues. And these exist all over the place. In the greater Cincinnati area, they have a league called Roster Match. There's a facility called Champions that runs a league. There's all these house leagues where really, really good competitive players go and play, sometimes in addition to their travel squad, sometimes instead of, because they have a position coach, they have a strength and conditioning coach, they play off-season basketball. There's all these other great things to do. There's boarding camps you can go to. There's leagues in other places you can go to. There's all these opportunities, and we feel as parents, oh my God, our kid has to play travel if he's going to make it. No, he doesn't. He can. It's the most common route. But you know what? If your kid is playing travel ball in high school and wants to play in college, they're also going to college camps. They're also going to showcases. And if they're really, really, really good, they're going to multi-day showcases that involve games, that involve camps, that involve a significant amount of travel. How do you fit all of that into your life without getting injured, without getting overworked, and still being a contributor to that travel team that was so critical you make? Now, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds, we are selling them their high school career when we sell them their travel teams. And it kills me because, Mom and Dad, I've got a little tiny baby secret for you. Actually, I've got two. Two. Number one, most importantly, if your child hasn't hit puberty, I don't care if we're talking girls or boys, if your child hasn't hit puberty and their teammates haven't hit puberty, you have no idea what they're going to be. You think you do, but you don't know. My son, as a freshman in high school, was short by my standards. He was 5'9". Now that's going to be taller or as tall as the average player at most high schools. But for our family, he was short. He was also 90 pounds. I don't care who you are, a 90-pound, 5'9" freshman who's shorter than his mom is small. As a senior in high school, he was over 6'4", and he started out at 155 pounds, finished the year at 175 pounds, and went from 6'4" to almost 6'5". Puberty changed everything for him. But when he was 5'7" in middle school, 5'6" in middle school, and the skinniest little kid you ever seen, he had trouble keeping up with the big dogs. A lot of those big dogs peaked in as far as height and weight as 8th or 9th graders and were the same size as seniors. That's not a knock on those kids. That is a reality check for mom and dad who think that elite travel program that you just have to make at 9, 10, 11 years old is going to dictate what your child does in high school. It's not. It's not. I'm not saying it can't contribute. I'm not saying it's a waste of time. I'm saying be realistic about your child and where they are in their age range, where they are in their development, where they are in puberty. Because it really, really, really matters. It really matters. Okay. Second thing. And I'm not putting travel teams on blast. Exposure means nothing when you're 11 years old. It means nothing when you're 13 years old. I know these organizations are telling you they're going to give you exposure. That exposure is only really valuable as a lesson to prepare your child for exposure when it matters. And when it matters is after puberty, when they're in high school, when they're old enough to be scouted, and they've decided that's what they want to do. Because playing in college is not the same as playing in high school. It's not the same as playing on a travel team. It is a full-time job that you're going to have to do while being a full-time student. And you have to maintain these grades and this physical attributes and these skills. Not every kid wants that in their life. Now, I'm not telling you to quit playing travel sports if you don't want to play in college. Play until you're done. You'll know when you're done. What I'm telling you is mom and dad stop stressing college with 10-year-olds. Don't worry about it. If you want to play for that national organization and write that big check, if you've got the means to do that and it's not going to be a problem for you, man, go do you. I'm not telling you not to. Don't put so much weight on that exposure and don't put that much pressure on your kid. It's just not what's important right now. So when they're trying out for these teams and you're seeing national brand, local grassroots team, don't automatically assume the pressure and the exposure of national brand is the only avenue forward for your child. And don't assume that if you choose grassroots, you can't get to national brand. And don't assume that if you start with national brand, that you're still going to be there in 2 years. Kids change teams a lot. And every year there's more and more and more turnover. More and more and more turnover. I love organizations that stand by their man. I love organizations that are like, all right, well, we took you a couple of years ago and you had a good year and then you had a bad year. We're not going to cut you loose. We're going to work with you and grow you and develop you. Those are the best organizations. I'm sorry, they are. They're the best organizations. But they're not always the best teams. The best teams are ruthless. They are. I was talking to a coach of one of the top softball teams, and this dude, he's an amazing coach. This is not an insult at all. One of the moms that was sitting there with us asked him a very blunt question. She said, how many girls do you cut every year? Because she was really worried about her daughter, who was not playing for him. She was playing on another team, but that coach had come, to the end of the season meeting and said, "Hey guys, we're gonna be even better next year. I got to make some changes. So come to tryouts ready to earn that spot." And it kind of made the mom nervous. And now her daughter's really good, so I'm guessing she was okay. But she asked this coach, she's like, "What does that mean? You coach an even better team coach. How many girls would you cut?" He goes, "I cut 6 every year, at least." She's like, 6? Well, how many do you carry? He's like, 14 or 16. It depends on what kind of terms we're going to go to, how much pitching depth I need, how many catchers I need. And she just kind of stared at him like, "That's a huge roster." He's like, "Yeah, but you go to a 5-day tournament, I need a huge roster." She's like, "Okay, all right. Well, we do mostly 3-day tournaments. Sometimes a 4th day, but mostly 3-day. I think they're going to plan on keeping 12 girls. You think he's really going to cut 6? He's like, "If he wants to get better, he is." And it was just that easy. If he wants to get better, he's going to cut 6 girls. Why? Well, because every year girls get better. And every year your team is successful, more better girls come out and try out. And if all you care about is winning this year, you're not building a program for long-term development. And this is what happens a lot at 17U and 18U. You're just going to take the 12 to 16 best girls. And it doesn't matter what your tie to them is. Now, it doesn't matter for a couple of reasons. First of all, if you're coaching 18U or 17U, this is very likely the last year they play travel. Because if they're going to college that summer between their senior year of high school and their first year of college, they're going to have things to do that aren't necessarily playing 18U travel sports. And if they're not going to play in college, a lot of girls are going to say, I want to enjoy my last summer before I go away to school, or I want to get a job and make money before I go away to school. Or if they're getting a real job out of high school, they just get started. They've got an apprenticeship to do. They've got a job to get. They've got on-the-job training. Maybe they want to take that one last family vacation. There's all these things that happen. So 18U numbers shrink drastically. So if you're a 17U or an 18U coach, you're like, ruthless, man, ruthless. I want my best players. And what you're going to find out if you're a 10U parent is there are teams like that at 10U. There are teams like that at 14U. There are teams like that every step of the way. And what you have to ask yourself is, am I prepared for that environment? Not is my kid. That's a big misconception. Everyone's like, well, whatever the kid wants. No, stop. How many smart decisions did you make as a 12-year-old? I'm not saying don't let your kid have input. I'm not saying don't discuss it with them, but be the adult. Look at the situation. How prepared are you as an adult to support your child in that environment? How prepared are you as an adult to pick your child up in that environment? How prepared are you as an adult to deal with the coach in that environment? Are you going to have the maturity to not have meltdowns that cost your child throughout the season? Because when you're in that environment, when you're playing on a cutthroat team that's way up here, that's going to cut half their players, that only cares about winning, it feels really good when your kid's a superstar and they're winning. And it's really, really, really hard when your kid's at the bottom and they're struggling. Or if they're even worse. Oh man, the hardest situation is you're on this team, right? And your kid is doing great and can't get ahead, can't climb the ladder, is stuck behind a kid for whatever reason. Don't scream at me all the reasons. It doesn't matter. What's hard as a parent, the hardest thing as a parent is to watch your child be awesome and not get the reward you feel they're owed for whatever reason. It doesn't matter. It doesn't. It hurts. It's hard. It is a challenge that you have to be prepared to face. Can you face that challenge? If you can't, how do you expect your child to? Don't put them in that environment until you as a family unit are prepared to deal with that environment. Build up to it. Maybe you get there, maybe you don't. But don't underestimate the value of a really nice guy who knows a little bit of something about your sport. They might even have a kid on the team. That's not a problem. If your child's going to get the reps, the exposure, the experience, have fun, and get better. And if they're not getting better enough, find them a trainer or go out back with them yourself. It's amazing how much a child can improve just going out there and doing some work on their own. And this is going to sound insane. And I am so sorry that my old man self is going to say this to you, but I'm going to say this to you. Maybe take your kid and a group of his friends to the park and then don't be involved in the game. Just let them play. I learned more about sports playing pickup, and kids don't have that anymore. They don't. In fact, this is going to sound insane, but I know a really good basketball coach who runs a pickup league. Now, think about what I just said. He runs a pickup league. Parents sign up, their children are rostered, they're sent a schedule, and then at the rec center, they play on the asphalt outside in the summer in a league. Now, here's the secret that they don't know before they get there. The league doesn't exist. When you show up, he throws pennies at half the kids and no pennies for the other half of the kids. And he rolls them out there on the two basketball courts and they play a game. Now, there is scorekeeping, and he kind of officiates it, but it really falls in the no blood, no foul realm of officiating. And you play basketball. Why does he call it a league? Because nobody would come when he just said, I'm going to the rec center to do pickup basketball. Nobody would bring their kid. So to get the parents to bring the kids, he called it a league. And now all of a sudden they want to know that their kid's playing for the Blazers or the Lakers or the whatever and who their teammates are. And so they get all this and they show up and he's just like, sorry, we'll get to the teams next week. Oh, next week comes and we'll get to the teams the week after that. They never get to the teams. Why? Because it's pickup. It's pickup league. You know, he worried more about the teams years earlier when he was first doing it because he was in a gymnasium and it was formalized. And what he realized is he didn't have to worry about all of that. Once he got the parents to show up, they kept showing up. But pickup basketball as a league is a fundamentally hilarious concept. And that's where we are in life. We're at a place where you have to be in a formal league to bring your kid. And if you really, really want your kid to get better, teach your kid to go play with their friends and their teammates on their own. They can take a bat or a fungo and go to the field with four of their bestest buddies, and they can take turns hitting the ball to each other. They can take turns doing front toss to each other. If you've got a big group, they can scrimmage 5-on-5. Yes, that's basketball numbers, but it works in baseball too. It works in softball too. I mean, it's amazing to me how few kids have a group they can just go work with. And when you've got a group you can just go work with, it does so much more for you than private lessons could ever do. Now, private lessons are great because they teach you some skills and things that you wouldn't learn on your own. They can sharpen you, but they cannot sharpen a blade that has no edge at all. They can just sharpen what's already slightly there. They can make you much, much, much more refined. If you have no interest in the game at all, and you're only doing it because mom and dad is making you, you can go to all the lessons you want, and you're not going to become a star. You have to want to play. And so, parents, make sure your kid wants to play. Give them every opportunity to play and use those lessons as tools to get better. And when they reach the point where they want to be great, that's when those things are so important. You want those lessons early on to get the fundamentals. You want those lessons at the very end to sharpen you into an absolute machine. But the most important thing happens in between there, and that is play. Go play. Go play. Okay. So that is tryouts. I veered off a little bit there, got into kind of the crazy world, but don't be afraid of not having a team. That was really what I was getting to there. Don't be afraid of not having a team. There's a million things you can do. There's a million places to play. And even if you're out in podunk nowhere, go throw hay bales. Like, get stronger. And I don't mean that as an insult. Quite literally, some of the strongest kids I've known were farm kids. I mean, but understand you have many more options than you think. It's not the end of the world if you don't make the team. They might be calling in January because they lost a kid to Little League elbow, and now they need you. I mean, it's a growing business, growth market right there, baby. So it's stressful. It's hard. There are options. There are great things you can do for your kid. Push them, but don't force them. That's, I think, lesson that every parent needs to know. It's okay to encourage and push. Don't ever force your kid. They won't get the full benefit if you're having to make them do it. And there is a difference between going and waking them up and saying, hey, your lesson or your weightlifting is happening in 35 minutes. Get your butt out of bed. And having to argue with them the whole way there about whether or not they want to go. Right? Motivation and scheduling and pushing them out the door, that's all part of being a parent. You're an adult. You have to do that. Someone had to do that for you. We aren't all finished products. But if they're in tears because they don't want to go work on sprints, well, chances are they're not going to get the benefit from it anyway. So evaluate that, talk about it, communicate, talk with the coaches about it, figure out what you need to do, and enjoy this process because it's going to end way faster than you think it's going to end. It is, and it's really, really hard. If you're a coach and you've been watching this and you're still sticking with me and you're saying, oh, well, this is all great. Anything for me? Well, I gave you one big thing, and that is do the running at the end. The second thing I would tell you is take more pitchers and catchers. Take more than you need. Those athletes can be moved to other positions. Talk to them before you put them on the roster. Have them understand that you're taking more of them. But I cannot tell you how many teams have said, well, I'm just going to take 11 or I'm just going to take 12 or I'm going to take 16 and then still run out of pitching and catching. When they come to your tryouts and they're a great pitcher, don't stress, well, this person's been my ace forever and I want them to still be my ace. So I'm not going to offer to this other kid because that's crazy. Look, you need more pitching. You do. Softball needs more pitching. I'm so sick of seeing girls throw 400 throws in a weekend. Baseball needs more pitching. We have way too many shoulder and elbow injuries and way too many kids who are pitching on Friday and Sunday. You need more pitching. And stop having kids catch back-to-back games. Stop having kids catch 4 games out of 5 in a weekend. Do better. Take more catchers, take more pitchers. And if you don't have enough of them on your roster and you're coaching 10-year-olds, have everybody try it. Everybody try it. You never know when you're going to have a kid throw that equipment on a squat who doesn't want to do it, but is willing to get back there to try it at practice with no obligations to stay with it no matter how good they are. Only to discover they are a catcher. It happens. Someone's got to put them back there. If you are a coach of hockey and you lasted this long, I feel the same way about goalies. But it takes a special breed to be a catcher or a goalie. So don't force it. Push it, encourage it, make them try it. Understand that that is a limiting position. So take more pitchers and catchers. That's my big advice to coaches. And if you're a player and you hate doing those things, make yourself indispensable somewhere else. Make yourself the best utility player you can be. Make yourself the fastest guy you can be, hardest hitter you can be, the best teammate you can be. You'd be amazed how many kids make a team because the coach was grading all these kids and he kept making little notes next to your name. He slid into home and immediately grabbed the bat to get it out of the way of the next guy. He struck out, but he still stopped to talk to the next kid in line who's trying to take his job. Um, all these little things that you do. Didn't throw his equipment. Kept his equipment in his bag. This is, and I'm droning on now, but this is a pointer that I think kids drastically underestimate. If you're organized with the way you keep your equipment in your bag, when you come back into the dugout, you're not just chucking your stuff up against the wall and going. Coaches are going to notice that your stuff's always where you need it to be. Coaches love that in a dugout. If they're having to step over your glove, having to pick your water bottle up because it's spilled on the bench, they don't like that. If you're awesome and you're hitting bombs, they're going to tolerate it. But if you're trying to make a team, impressions matter. Become a disciplined kid when it comes to how you treat your equipment, where you put it, how you put it away, and all those little things. And coaches will notice that. If you're at a tryout and it's one of those showcase styles where they do all the metrics and all that stuff, and then they play a little scrimmage or a little game, and a guy gets out on the bases, do what you would do with your regular teammates. I hope you would do this with your regular teammates. Grab his stuff and pick him up, run out there and give it to him. Even if especially if you're not in that inning, be that guy. Coaches note those things. They care about those things. And it's part of having a great culture. One of the coolest things I've seen in softball is how critical culture is to it. And look, I have nightmares. I wake up in cold sweats after softball tournaments. I hear the chants in my head because those teams are so community driven. And what I mean by that is they chant for each other, they pick each other up. There's so much more emotion. There's so much more camaraderie, and some of it's forced, some of it's artificial, but it's part of the culture of softball in a way that it isn't in any of the boys sports I've ever seen, in the way it isn't in girls basketball. And it's something that coaches, especially in softball, take note of. If you've got a girl who really fits and she's a 6 and someone else is a 7, that could be the point that jumps them up into a 7, and now you've got the great teammate versus the meh. You take the great teammate. So don't underestimate the value of that. So that and coaches don't understand. If you're a coach who doesn't evaluate that at all and only cares about the metrics, you're missing out. So tryout season is here. It's hard. It's stressful. Adults be adults. Kids be players. And coaches, hey, you know what? Good luck because this is brutal on you also. I'm Coach Eric. Check out my book.